So interconnecting Cisco network devices, the purpose here is twofold. One, and most importantly, I really want to build or increase your knowledge of data networking. Some people know just enough about data networking to be dangerous, and that's a very good thing because it means you're brave enough to go dive into networking without being afraid of making a mistake. However, the likelihood of you making a mistake if you're in that state is very high. And how do I know that? Because I was one of those people, right? I learned data networking by poking around with things it was a Novell network at the time in the mid 90s. And I was poking around with the Novell network and I started breaking things. And when you break them, you have to fix them because you don't want anybody to find out that you broke the network. So you have to learn how to fix it and you keep building your skills and so on. But there is that stage where knowing just enough to be dangerous about networking and IT really can get you into trouble. So my intention here is to get you past that point and really get you some solid core understanding of data networking concepts. The second purpose here is to help prepare you to take the Cisco Certified Network Associate exam, or the CCNA. Now, the CCNA is a challenging exam. Even when I took it 13 years ago for the first time, it was a challenging exam back then. And since then, they've added extensive topics to it, making it even more challenging. What you're going to find out throughout the course is a lot of the topics that we cover are very foreign. They don't make sense. It's happening in a world that doesn't necessarily exist, so to speak. It's happening in this virtual world that we can't really always see and dive into. We have to imagine it, understand how the behavior works, and then apply it so that we can move data around our network appropriately. And the great thing about networking in general, whether it be Cisco networking or any data networking, is that data networking follows some pretty hardcore, specific, and precise rules that once you know how the rules work and you realize that everything we do in data networking follows these set of rules, you just need to know what the rules are and how to apply them. Data networking is actually quite easy and it's really cool. But the learning curve for getting there is quite extensive. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks along the way here so that you can learn how to use these videos to best prepare to learn about data networking and prepare to take the CCNA. Some prerequisites. All right, if you're watching this video now, you probably meet the prerequisites for the course. I really need you to have some basic computer skills because this course is not about how to use Windows or any operating system on a desktop machine, Windows, Mac, Linux. We're really not going to cover a whole lot about how to use that machine. So if you can get your web browser open, get to this website, you're in good shape. You may need to install files from the internet as well. So if you know how to download and install an application from the internet, you may need that along the way because there are a few files that I have you download to make using the Cisco equipment a little bit easier. Beyond that, the prerequisites that you really need here is diligence and determination. I teach this to students full time. I watch the students both excel with this material and I watch them struggle with it. It is difficult material and it requires diligence. I oftentimes say to my students that the instructions for learning data networking are written on the back of a shampoo bottle. If you've ever read the instructions on a shampoo bottle, they say lather it up with shampoo, rinse it off, wash it, and repeat. So rinse, wash, repeat is the secret here to learning data networking. So when you're watching these videos, sometimes they're going to go a little bit fast. But the nice part is that it's a video, so you can pause it and rewind it and relearn that concept. Or there are some videos that are demonstrations, and you can actually have the video up in one corner of your screen and be configuring a Cisco router in the other right along with me. So you really are going to want to use the pause and rewind features of the player so that when you're not understanding a concept, you can come back to it. So rinse, wash, repeat. Don't forget that throughout the whole series. It's going to be very, very, very important. What are the topics we're going to cover? Well, the big one is vocabulary and language. In data networking, we use some very precise terminology. Sometimes that terminology that we're using has multiple meanings, especially the word network. All right, we're going to use the word network in so many different ways, especially when we get to IP address and subnetting and IP address manipulation. We use the word network so precisely sometimes, we have to be very aware of the context of the word network, and we need to learn how to apply that. And that's going to be true for all of the concepts that we learned throughout this course. So be aware that the vocabulary and language that we use is very precise, and I try to keep it that way throughout the presentation so that you understand the importance of the precision of the words that we're using here. Some of the concepts we're going to learn. The big ones are subnetting and address manipulation. We spend a lot of time with subnetting and address manipulation. There are numerous videos on this. This is a somewhat complex topic. I try to boil it down to the basics for you so you can understand it in binary. If you understand subnetting and IP address manipulation in binary, all other aspects of data networking become a little bit easier. It's a little bit harder to learn it that way, but everything else becomes easier. Packet encapsulation, we're going to learn how that works. We're going to learn the routing process and how routers actually move traffic through an internetwork. We're going to learn how to create static routes and dynamic routes with that as well. We're also going to learn switch operation. So we'll see how switches use MAC addresses and special processors on the interfaces of a switch in order to make data networking at layer 2 very, very efficient. And you'll understand all this terminology as we go through the videos. Last, I have pretty extensive hands-on demonstrations. We do a really good base configuration of a Cisco router and a Cisco switch, where I show you how to turn on all the components of it and really dive into the Cisco operating system called iOS, or Internetworking Operating System. We're going to learn how to do network address translation, which is something that you use in your home network. If you have a cable modem or DSL modem or satellite modem or even dial-up for that matter, you're most likely doing some version of network address translation in your environment. We're going to learn exactly how that works and how to configure it. We'll do static and dynamic routing, and then we'll also learn a little bit about security that we can apply to our routers and switches in order to create an environment that is a lot more stable and a lot less prone to different types of network attacks. Last, building a lab for yourself. Although you don't necessarily need to build a lab for yourself, if you really want to understand Cisco networking well, you really want some type of real hardware to work with. And if you have the resources available and the dedication, you want to have a lab that's similar to mine here. I have 3 Cisco 1841 routers, and there are 2 serial interfaces on each of those. I have 2 Catalyst 2950 24-port switches. Those are layer 2 switches. And then I have 1 Cisco Catalyst 3560 24-port layer 3 switch. All right, and the pictures of each one are here. These are very similar to the devices that I have. In fact, this top one is actually a picture of my device. These bottom 2 switches are very similar to the ones that I have. The 1841 routers are actually a discontinued series of router. So this kit on eBay cost me a little less than $1,000. That's quite a bit of money. You don't necessarily need to spend $1,000 on a kit. I've seen kits out there for less than $500 on eBay that are completely acceptable. But just so you know, the lab that I'm using, it's these 3 different pieces of equipment here that I have set up. I always show you a network diagram of how I have everything connected. So if you want to reproduce it in your own lab environment, you're able to do that. So if you do want a lab, I have a couple recommendations here. Build your own from eBay. And there are some online virtual labs that you can find if you just start Googling around for online virtual labs. Cisco even has some on their website where you can sign up and pay a fixed amount. I believe some of them are as low as $70 for 3 or 4 months of access to an online lab where you get access to real hardware. You just do it across the internet. It's based in a cloud someplace. And there are numerous companies that allow this online virtual lab. So if you can't afford the expense of buying a lab on eBay, you may want to look at doing the online virtual labs as you're preparing for the CCNA. Books. You are going to want some type of technical reference to use along with the video series. The video series, I spend a lot of time explaining really technical concepts to you and trying to break them down into the most simple pieces possible. I try to give you as much language as I can as well. However, what I've found after teaching this for quite a number of years now is that students do best when they engage multiple mechanisms of learning in order to obtain information. So, reading is one of those. Watching videos and listening to audio is another one. Doing the labs is another one. And the more of those learning styles that you can engage in your process, the better off you're going to be. So I highly recommend picking up a Cisco book. Wendell Odom writes a lot of the Cisco Press books for CCNA. He does a great job with that. I think he's an outstanding author. He does a good job at breaking down the complex concepts into a language that you can understand, but he doesn't deviate from the intense language as well. So you really get a deep understanding of data networking when working with Wendell Odom. I've used Todd Lamell's study guides before as well, and I really appreciate his style. He takes the data networking concepts and he really presents it in a very simple way and gives you the information and the vocabulary that you need really to study and pass the CCNA. Last, Cisco.com. I still use Cisco.com constantly, as do all of my peers in data networking and other internet resources in order to troubleshoot and solve problems. Google is the #1 troubleshooter of problems. In fact, there is a site called Let Me Google That For You. And what it is when somebody asks you a stupid question that they can simply just go right in front of their computer, which most people are in front of anyway, and type in a question into Google, it'll actually 9 times out of 10 provide you the answer. That does take some practice, especially working with data networking. We don't dive into that too much, but you'll just get used to using Cisco.com and internet resources as you progress through your experience with data networking. In the beginning, the video and the books should be sufficient, but if you need more information, head to the internet. Wikipedia is actually a great source for data networking information because it's usually quite accurate on there because it's peer reviewed, and the peers that review it want it updated correctly so we understand how it works. And it's a lot easier to learn than some of the other resources we have.